Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for coming. My name's Jim Moffitt, and I am the North America DevOps Tech Sales Leader for IBM Cloud. And Mark Cesario is here with me, who's the DevOps Technical Specialist Executive as well. And Mark and I accept the challenge of the post-lunch session. All right? So let's see how we do. So you'll see that the topic up here says using value stream mapping to optimize your delivery pipeline, which is a really wonky sounding thing, right? But what it really is what we've found out at IBM is when we have these conversations about DevOps, knowing that depending on where you're coming from, you have all these different opinions of what that really means. You know, we've all had that conversation, of course. But when it comes to, the clicker, when it comes to DevOps, the conversation that we like to have is what's slowing you down, because you know, our definition of DevOps, and I'm going to do a little pre-drawing here. There'll be more drawing, but this will be some pre-drawing. When I talk to clients about DevOps and trying to define what it is, it's really simple. It gets complicated, but the first conversation is really simple. Okay? We have ideas, we have features, we have enhancement requests, we have defects, we have things we have to get, things we have to do, and things we have to get out into production. We have to get them out into production so that we can get them out to our users, our clients, our whatever you want to say, as fast as possible. Or, hey, come on, no problem. Either clients or I'm going to say maybe like a client proxy too, right? Because sometimes we have systems where I can't get that out as fast as possible into production per se because I have a lot of reasons why I don't want to drop stuff out every week, every 2 weeks or whatever. But I would like it to get in front of someone who can give me some feedback on it, because that's what we're really looking for here, is the feedback on, are we putting the right thing out there? Is it working? Am I getting like 2 stars on my app review? Oh my God, what's happening here? You know, but let's get that feedback back right away so that we can funnel that back into the process, right? And the feedback that we're getting back is on at least 3 things. I'm going to say 3 things. You want feedback on on your application, but you also want feedback on the environment that it's running on. So you want to know, is it having some sort of issues with, trust me, that's environment. Is it having any issues, performance issues, security issues, things like that. And you also want to get feedback on how did the process we used to deploy that out there work. I should put an arrow up there. It's going that way. So really simply, it's all about making what this says as SDLC, but the process you use to get your application out into production is efficient and as fast as possible. Does that sound like, yeah, does it resonate? I think Mark was going to talk to you about what are some of the things that we find really are often the key constraints, the things we find. So when I go out and I talk to clients all the time, I guarantee you I'm finding a lot of this stuff. But this is a good collection. Well, I'll let Mark talk.
Sure. Pleasure to meet you all. I forgot you guys were coming in after lunch. I'm not going to know anything, but I'm sure you've run into this. How difficult is the stand-up environment? I assume in dev it's not as bad, but as you move up into QA and pre-stage, it gets tougher and tougher. So these are the key things. Gene Kim, big in the whole DevOps world. If you ever read a nice book, The Phoenix Project, great book about the whole DevOps experience and the pain, and you'll live it. So how long does environment take to stand up in general? What do you guys run into? Days, weeks?
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. I find that common. Anybody else?
About a month.
About a month, yeah. Okay. So one key you'll find is that more and more with these hybrid clouds, they have these things referred to as patterns, blueprints. And you can literally take a blueprint what we call software-defined environment, infrastructure as code, and stand that, and actually version that environment, stand it up, drop your network, drop your OS, drop your application, your testing, whatever you need, and allows you to spin that environment up, use it, test against it, and spin it down, literally in minutes, or however it takes you to do your 1 or 2 sprints or a sprint you're working on, whatever it happens to be. So environments become key, making them available and easily stand them up and actually shut them down as well. The deployment manually, what I say is that automation is a given. Everyone's doing it, everyone's doing scripts, but to me that's still manual.
Is that true though? When we talk about application deployments today, do we find, and I didn't take the temperature of the room to find out who's on app and who's on ops or anything like that, but for your deployments, do you find you're using automated deployment to move your applications out into your environments?
Yeah.
Sure. Somewhat, yeah.
Sure, yeah, okay. And that's good. I mean, I see people using Chef and Puppet, but there's definitely technologies out there to actually push button, what we call specific application deployment. Everything that it takes to push that environment. So we have integration servers like a Jenkins. They're fine going down a serial line. They can do one thing very well. When you start adding the database portion of it, when you start adding the app server, different pieces, it gets tougher. So another thing is the test time, what it takes to set up and run. There is the techniques for virtualization, for stubbing. So allows you to, how do you get more speed if you have to hook up to a large, AR system or HR system? You got to be able to stub those out so that the developer can be working on that without having that huge system to deal with. Tightly coupled architecture, I'm sure you guys have some monolithic stuff hanging around. I know we did at IBM. You got to start dealing with that. But there are ways around it, even if you have that today, to make that happen. Development practices, we're going to hit on that. A collection of boxes that can actually start working with it. And last thing is planning. It all comes down to DevOps is not something you buy, it's something you do. So it takes a whole cultural change. Those are just some key points.
Yep, so these are a lot of the constraints that we'll find as he moves this down a little bit. A lot of the constraints that you're going to find. This is the other side of that equation. These are like the practices that we find oftentimes are going to solve a lot of the problems that you find. And again, remember, we're thinking about end-to-end process. So this isn't simply, I think Mark just said, you don't buy DevOps, right? It's this application of a different way of thinking about how we develop our applications, how our organizations interact with each other, how do we move from siloed areas into more cross-functional teams, for example. There it is, right there, number 2, under planning and measurement. So these are all different types of practices that we can give. And oftentimes these practices, this is not often, not always, but often, a lot of the constraints that we find are when our silos butt up against the other silo, right? We get really good at optimizing within our silos, because that's where we spend our day jobs, right? Agile development. Our development teams got really, really good at practicing Agile and cranking out working code every 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever your iteration is, get those through our test environments, and then just right into the wall of production, right? Because production is a protected area, and we don't make change there very often, for very good reasons, because operations folks, their job is to keep the systems up, and what brings systems down? Often new code, change, yeah. So like, oh my God, we're going in different directions here, right? So again, DevOps is how do we change that? So a lot of it is actually silo breaking, okay? And a lot of this stuff you see here is in the interest of silo breaking, automated release and deploy, putting together ways of making sure that we practice how we can move our applications through without disrupting existing controls, automated environment provisioning to help the operations team sets up the platforms that we can use and says, here you go, you can create environments when you need them, you click these buttons, you do it this way. So trying to enable it, that's what's going on here. Agile development. So I'm not going to take you guys through all of those, but the idea is these are the key practices that we find will solve a lot of the problems that we find. When we talk about the problems that we find and how we find them, this is where we talk about value stream mapping. Are you guys familiar with the term value stream mapping? Yeah, right. It's a lean technique. So lean development, are you guys familiar with lean techniques for development? All popped out of the Toyota production system. The idea about Toyota got really good at figuring out how to build stuff, right? And then the US said, nah, we don't need that, we're good. And then you saw it happen. But actually now it's de facto, right? It's making your delivery process as efficient as possible. So in that guise, what we do with what this technique does, when you apply value stream mapping from an end-to-end perspective in your organization, you could find those areas of inefficiency and waste and rework and anything that's slowing you down. You could find it, you could target it, and then you could figure out, all right, now of course it's not going to be just this stuff, right? But a lot of times it's going to be this stuff. What can we apply to those inefficiencies to help move this along? That no end-to-end focus is good. I talked about the silos, right? How often do we get our folks together from one end of a process to the other end of the process to talk about, hey, what's really going on here? Not very often. I spend a lot of my time trying to get clients to come to the table, and everyone's like, oh, we're so busy, but it's really valuable when you have this cross-functional discussion going across the table. And when we apply these techniques, which are basically, and when I say value stream mapping, what I'm talking about here, guys, is let's talk about your process. What happens when that idea comes in, right? Okay, what's next? What happens next? How long does that take, right? What's the next step? All that, how long does that take in there? It's just a real step-by-step walk through your process to find out what's going on.
Yeah, what's amazing is we're talking in a 2-hour window, just sitting down with the customer and doing that map, you can uncover so much just by just looking at stepping back, seeing the gaps.
Right. So this is what it kind of looks like when we draw it up on the whiteboard. This is why we requested the whiteboard for you guys, because what Mark and I are going to do is we're going to walk through this process. We're going to mock it out a little bit to show you how to have this conversation, how to examine your process. Now, we don't have a lot of time. I spend like 4 hours with clients doing this stuff. So we're going to take a pretty high flyover of this, right? But it's the point is to get you guys an idea about how this works and how this process can help enable you and your organizations for how can this be better. And I always say this is really the front door to the process. I'm wandering away too far. This is the front door to the process, and this is a great way to answer the question. DevOps, it's like this big, and where do we get started? Right? Or we did get started, we've got pilots over here. We all have teams that are experimenting, right? A lot of times it's in the mobile teams or digital teams like that. The cool kids are rolling with with DevOps and automation and whatnot, but how do we expand that across the enterprise? And how do we figure out where to start next exactly? This is at least going to give you a picture of what's going on, and what you can use it for is to build a roadmap and then figure out where do I apply the various techniques and technologies and tools.
Want to try it?
Yeah, so before we get started here, I'm going to erase this. Do you guys have any questions? Observations? Retorts? No? Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to be me, so I get the easy job.
I get the hard job.
Mark, you're going to be, who do you want to be?
I'll be some director of developers. It's a development team for a very large insurance company that has massive historical data.
Okay, so Mark's director of development. Oftentimes, like I said, we would have a bunch of people in the room to talk about this process, but we're just doing it like this for right now. I'm going to actually redraw this really quickly. I don't know why I just erased that. Okay. This is just background, so feedback in here. So, thanks for coming. Happy to talk to you about your current processes. Yeah. So, give me a little bit about the sort of technology and business background that's going on.
Sure. So we've got a very large insurance company been around. We do traditional insurance and very what we want to do, insurance growth or whatever. We deal with a lot of independent agents. So we have about maybe 5 or 6 lines of businesses. Mm-hmm. We do some investments, we have investment. But a lot of our growth was through acquisitions. So we actually have we end up with a
Environments and environments and environments.
collection of them. And we're seeing that as we grow, we're competing with this mobile app.
So you see the landscape's kind of changing around you. Is it causing you to need to go faster?
And we have a collection of these large, we're talking Z, mainframe data, which is critical to our analytics and to our independent agents, but also causing us this pain as our marketing and our other teams are trying to deliver these web apps in literally days or weeks.
So how long do you think it takes you right now to get
Right
that application
now, we
out
do this-
from idea to production?
About 9 months. And that's us working as hard as we can do it, as hard as we can go. And I heard people doing it in 3 months, and I want to see it delivered.
9 months, does that time frame resonate with you guys as far as how long it takes to get something out? Yeah.
And again, we're getting like 3-star ratings. I mean, our mobile, we can't, we're worried about share.
Right. So your goals really are to retain market share, right?
Yep.
Or grow market share.
We want to see our revenue.
You want to make money, more money, right?
Probably they want double digits.
Right. Okay. All right. That's true. Okay. So where do let's talk about the process, right? The end-to-end process. Where does it start?
So we have 5 lines of businesses where we have a lot of, let's say, business analysts. We have a PMO office.
Okay.
So we're getting these ideas, changes coming in from a lot of areas.
You got the LOB, line of business. You got the business analyst. There's a PMO in the mix here.
Got all this going on, and you can imagine all the acquisition. We tried a consolidation program. We actually did it. It took a couple of years, and because we had an AR system, we literally had 4 or 5 at one point.
Do the ideas always go? What's the flow of the ideas? It comes from the line of business.
This is the wrong one. Analyst, then goes back and forth. That may take several weeks. It could. I mean, it could literally.
Sure.
Before it actually gets to the point where it actually gets into a ticket or some type of our change control board, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Before it actually gets into some sprinkler, let's say, or some of the more agile teams.
Do you find your PMO gets involved all the time?
PMO does, and they're trying to get some reuse or some coordination. That's kind of challenging. We have 6 different profit businesses,
Right.
all competing, moving at different pace.
Do they have a hard time seeing exactly what's going on?
We are.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to circle this.
So that is a pain point.
Visibility, right? End-to-end visibility?
Across all of them, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what happens next? So the ideas come in. Okay, let's assume they get funded, and I know that's a whole other conversation, guys. So I'm going to abstract that a little bit. So the miracle happens, and the money shows up. So tell me about the development team.
So now we've got a stand-up environment, right? We've got to have a dev environment, and that's usually not too painful. We can literally get that probably in a week now. Get down to dev.
The development environment in a week.
That's not bad. Which is not bad. As you go next, that's where it gets bad. That's where life changes.
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. What happens when, what's the next step? How does the code, so okay, let's say, I'm going to skip over how the team got assembled too, guys, by the way. That's a whole other part we could talk about. So the team is working on it, they're developing.
Agile techniques.
Okay, good.
About 3-4 years ago started that. What happening is what we're running into is that we go to that next environment, we've got all these builds stacking up, and those next environment takes literally weeks, anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, even a QA, because we have some performance issues, we have some back-end databases, large databases, a lot of issues before you can actually do real testing.
Right, so you got dev, you got build, and you're going to move over into your QA organization over here.
So you get your basic testing and your integration testing, performance and security.
So you've got dev. How often are you building?
Well, builds are happening literally almost daily.
Daily. That's good.
That's our problem, is that that's stacking up and we're running into these builds back home.
Okay, so you've got a QA environment.
Yep, and that's where they're
Environments, of course.
All these builds, stacking them up, and eventually QA is trying to manage them. It's getting tougher and tougher.
So probably looks a little bit like this, right?
Yeah.
So time out. I talked about silos a little bit, guys. So this is a good example of where the development organization, and part of the development organization even, because you can bring QA into that as well, have gotten really good at being able to deliver. But they're pushing out too many builds into QA here, and QA is not able to hold up. So how long, Mark, do you
So
find?
we have another issue. We got a mobile team coming in.
Yeah.
And now they want to do a lot of, and they want QA to test that. And we have environments, and they go and get it quickly. Getting tougher and tougher.
So you said it took how long for the development environment to stand up their environments?
About a week.
A week.
And how long does it take for the
QA
QA?
organization to get resources in the environment.
We've done about, it's about 6+.
Okay.
And that's on a good day.
All right. So that's a problem, obviously. So let's talk about once stuff gets out of QA.
Yep.
Now we're moving toward
Production.
More integrated tests, integration testing, that sort of thing we do.
Oh, more testing.
And the performance testing, those two will put together, let's say. And that's a whole other environment, right?
Right, so you've got a bunch of stuff going on here, right? Integration test. And then you've got
your road to production, if you will, staging. Hey, tell me a little bit about your integration environment and your testing there. Now, this is when you start interacting not only with your team per se, right? But remember, we've got a bunch of other guys, teams that are out here actually developing too, and our applications are dependent on that. So you're not testing in a silo, right? How's that work?
And that's where things get, that's where you get that 9-month window. Yeah. And that's when we start getting into very longer windows for testing because we have to do the integration stuff. The environments get much larger, and we're not. We'd love to be able to do this thing called virtualization, but we just haven't been able to get around to that. So we're doing spending maybe about 3. I mean, it could be a good 3 months just doing a good integration test. Wrapping all pieces of players together, running the test, failing, going through the process.
So we've got a number of things going on here. First, it's the ability to get enough environments for your integration testing, right? But it's also the dependencies on having those applications available within the environments.
And there's so much going on where we have to take it to make sure there isn't it's brittle and it's can be monolithic in certain pieces. So it's hard to keep them together.
Right, so this goes all the way through here.
Yep.
Exactly.
All right, so you finally grind through that process. And I've lived this before, guys, definitely. And we're talking about getting your application out into production. Tell me about the...
Oh, no, that's a jewel.
The deployment process.
So we're really scared there, right? Because this has to be up and running. And it's so big, we can't really make a copy of it, right? So this has to be done in pieces and very carefully. So it's spread out over a long window as we try to take pieces of it and test what we can before we push it into production.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually almost a 2-month window before we actually have our release. We actually do the major release.
Right, right.
Is that process, is it manual today, or?
Very manual.
Yeah.
Intensive.
Okay.
Costly to be production now.
Okay.
As I have on watch.
Oh, you're new, right?
That's right.
Okay. So,
is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you want to tell me? So we've basically taken at a very high level, we've taken the process through where the idea came from, and how, when the development team start working on it, how does that start moving through the process? We've talked about you've built efficiencies in your development organization, but your QA environment your QA team is not able to keep up. We've talked about the complexities in your integration testing between all the environments involved and coordinating with the teams involved. What about test data?
As I mentioned, that's a major issue because we have historical large data, and to take those data sets and try to do some testing, realistic testing is hard.
So we've got environment issues here, we've got data issues here.
What we end up with is a lot of what we call non-production environments hanging around. Because no one wants to tear them down. They're around for years. And no one will tear them down because you have to bring them out for testing. And another thing we have going on, we've got a lot of, let's say, outside influences, requirements, government requirements, federal, state, we have to deal with. So you layer that on top of this. And that then brings that, you get adds more time overall.
I'm going to put that over here in a box called regulations. This way.
But it really impacts the whole impact for us.
Okay.
How about once you get your application into production, are you able to receive feedback on how it's being used?
I want to say we do get it from the agents, probably pretty quickly, but we're not getting from that end user, that mobile. We just don't have that metrics or that feedback. Would be nice, because that's what we need. When we find out about it, that's when we get the rating.
Right.
When it's way too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, good.
Good.
Okay, so anything else you want to throw up here?
No.
Okay, good. Any other problems you want to tell me about?
I'm filling out my resume right now.
I want to cut it short there because I think you get the idea, right, of how this process works. So before I take a look at some of those specific problems, I just wanted to give you guys, we didn't get into this because of the time available to us, right? And we can all read. But when we take a look at all these activities, you're really going to be talking about it at a much lower level, right? Obviously, to figure out what's going on. And these are just the kind of metrics that are actually being driven through this process. The wait time, which is the time spent sitting there waiting for something to happen, and the standing up your environments is a really good example of that. I would test, but we're waiting for that environment to get stood up, so I guess we'll try to fill the time doing something else, right? We're good at that. Processing time is how long it takes once I'm in there. So if you think about your test processes, if you're going down a largely manual testing process, you're going to spend a lot of time and processing time in that. In-process wait time is when you're in the process, but things are stopping you from moving forward. Think about you stand the environment up, but then now you got to configure the environment. Oh, that's fun. That's another week. And finally, you put it all together in your end-to-end cycle time. And what these give you is more of the, yeah, we talk about the problem, and I can make little circles and say this is an issue, but if I can give you the hard facts in the time, the numbers, this is how we sell it. This is how we make a case that this is an issue, and there are things we can do to get better. Okay, I think we're doing good. I want to get some time for questions. One thing I want to talk about, thank you, is the red circles, right? So, Mark, why don't we talk a little bit about the technologies that are in place. And before I just say that, I'm going to say IBM, likes to take a really holistic look at this. And it's not just tools, like I said earlier, that you use to solve these problems. So there's lots of organizational type changes that you can make, as well as, and this is the hard part, cultural changes. And there's a lot you can do there, but some of that stuff is slow moving. But there is also technologies that we can put in play here, and this is an emerging technology track, right? So let's talk a little bit about what we can do about in here, Mark.
Yeah, just one thing I want to say is that, you really need the tools. Every time we hear about culture, it's really important. You have to have that cultural change. But to make this happen, you do need tools. So that's what's unique about DevOps.
Let's run through it, and then
Sure.
we have a couple minutes for questions.
So for example, if you're looking at QA, you've got to take these environments, you have a large, maybe it's SAP, or I don't know what it is in the government, some large government solution that's been around for a long time. How do you get cycles on that where you get actual faster, get some results back? And that's what we call test virtualization. It allows you to stub out, so to that program, to that developer, he can access that piece of information, get it, it comes back and forth just as he expected. For example, as credit card companies, they use test virtualization to hit a particular bank to try the credit card, but they're not getting charged .0 pennies. They just use they virtualize it. Then when they do the final test, they'll actually go get the charge. So it's really important. So we can start spinning up and actually start getting more velocity for those large monolithic apps that you have by using this test virtualization. Another technique, when you start getting into environments and building up environments, as I talked about earlier, is having this pattern capability, a blueprint we call it, where you can actually go in and spin up an environment, actually version that environment, use it, whatever you need to do the test virtualization, do your unit testing, integration testing. When you're done with it, finish your code, pass it on, and then tear that environment down.
Right, and we have in a really large part. Look, when we started talking about DevOps, right, a couple of years ago, the term came up around 2008, but a lot of times that conversation was really around what's called continuous delivery, right? A lot of times we're talking about continuous delivery when we talked about DevOps. It's expanded beyond that, but it's still such an important part of it. So continuous delivery, the ability to automate the application deployments, right? Push a button, take a change that used to take 4 hours, 6 hours, I live that, and do it in 10 minutes is fantastic. And it's not only with the application itself, but it's also full stack, right? So when we start talking about platform as a service and other capabilities, the software-defined environments that Mark was talking, we're not just moving the application through continuous delivery, we're delivering the application and its environment, right? And once you start breaking out of those monolithic architectures, your microservices, you're moving your parts of the application through the delivery process into wherever they're going to land. Traditional environments, platform as a service environments, into containered environments, things like that.
And there's disruptive, innovative technologies out there where you can quickly have a mobile app up and running, right? In your iPhone. And that's important, you need that. But you also have this underlying, what we call system of records, where you have your key data or your key integrations that you need. So you need that tooling, that glue between that. And that's important. I don't know how to refer that as, but that's that application capability to talk both to your disruptive technologies that you have, and also what we call your system of record or your more traditional IT.
Yeah, we refer to that as this multi-speed environment that we live in, where you have your traditional systems that provide enterprise-like services for your quote-unquote innovation platforms, digital and mobile, and being able, this applies to all of that. You can enable that in your traditional systems. Believe me, you can. We do it, as well as with your innovation platforms, and that's the really important part. Because being able to get those two to work together. So techniques like Mark was talking about, like the service virtualization, is going to help loosen up that integration between those environments. Okay.
And that's key. That's really about the DevOps, where you start working together to handle both of those.
Yeah. So that was a lot of information in 30 minutes, but. The key takeaway is someone says, what did you just go to? What did they talk about? They talked a lot about a way to determine where can we get started with DevOps? What are a lot of the traditional constraints that are discovered when we take a look at our environments? And I showed you pretty quickly 12 ways to fix everything, right? And then I moved off that really fast. But then we demonstrated kind of how you can take this back, right? And try to figure out in your organization, how can we find this? And I will also add that we do this for free, by the way, so we will come in and help you with this. So we like to do that. It helps our clients discover where they have issues. We're happy to do that. It's there for you as well, okay? Any questions, comments?
I think one of the key, not questions but comments,
Sure.
is the key challenges we encounter. So we might have a blueprint of an environment and we try to stand up. But once we start integrating them to the newly built applications, we run into a lot of configuration issues, like ports need to be opened, and now we have to submit firewall requests, which kind of are the most bottlenecks for us, which take about 4 weeks of a turnaround. And then comes the environment shakedown, does it meet your requirements? So that's one of our biggest challenges also.
So we call that full stack deployment. So when you do the full stack, it includes all your middleware, all your configurations, all your ports, your URLs, whatever you have. So you take all those configurations out and you stand up that stack. So you can push it up, you can send it up, and then you want to put it somewhere else, you can change your configurations.
Okay.
So that's full stack application deployment, which includes your blueprint, all your configurations. What you normally would do with Chef and Puppet, you would do that in full stack deployment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good question, because that's real.
We live through the pain every day, so.
Yeah, I hear you.
So if you're nowhere near this,
Okay.
you have to build from the back end forward in terms of your capabilities.
Yeah, so if you're nowhere near this, yeah, so you almost, where do you get started? Because it's going to be a sea of red up here, right? I'll take the easy way out and say, okay, you make a decision about what's most important to you. Right? But I think it's really cultural, the cultural aspect is really important. I mean, you gotta understand how we can work together. There's that cross-functional team idea, for example, where you shift operations left. Like, let's talk to them right away so we know what ports we have to have open. We don't discover that in production. That stuff's really important. If you're not doing iterative, agile development, move in that direction. It's for legacy applications too, it really is. So that's a very important thing to get going, because if you're only delivering something every year and a half, does it matter how quickly you get that thing out into production? Probably not, right? Definitely looking into automation though, right? So once you start going down the agile road, now you're gonna start thinking about continuous integration, making sure that you're building every day, making sure you have the ability to deploy to your environments as fast as possible. That's gonna save you a lot of time. Biggest return on investment is gonna be application automated deployment.
And one caveat I would have is you have to deal with whatever tooling you decide on. You gotta be able to have something that deals with everything. In other words, you gotta deal with systemize, you gotta deal with Z, you're gonna have to deal with Linux, you're gonna have to deal with your Microsoft, your Azure, whatever. You're gonna have to make sure that's one of the key caveats that I have is when I deliver, you've gotta look at all platforms. And then you can take those pieces and stand up an environment, start dealing with this big sea of red, and maybe you can start dealing with environments slowly. But if you don't have that capability built in, it's going to be very tough and you'll be very kind of choppy.
So, anything else?
Well, they stayed away.
Mission accomplished. Oh, good.
Would you recommend the DevOps approach for building a, let's say, enterprise data management system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You can apply the same
Yep.
principle?
Yeah.
Yeah,
In fact,
absolutely.
using the value stream would be a great start. You would see what would pop out.
Okay, I don't think our contact information is on the slides or whatever, but we'll have to see what we can do about making it available. If you guys have any questions, follow up.
So I'm happy, of course, to talk to anyone if you have any questions. If you have any questions afterwards, I'll be around for a little bit as well.
And again, we can always do the optimization and innovation workshop. Always available. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.